It's all bad. No, the start is good. It's all equally bad. Really? That's impressive. Okay, 5 minutes.
Belief. A lot of the state. The belief that the state is an institution that exists to suppress the interests of one class or another, right? Either under capitalism, that it would be the dictatorship of capital, where capitalists suppress the interests of workers to the benefit of their profits. Now, under Marxism, the state serves the purpose of basically serving the interests of workers to the benefit of, to the benefit of the workers to suppress the interests of the capitalists. Because,
no, right off the bat, in a proletarian state, for one, there wouldn't be any capitalists to suppress. This is like the version of proletarian state that Marxists, quote unquote Marxists, Leninists like this push. She, by the way, she, her. The version of it that they push is like Chinese socialism, to the extent that it can be called socialism, which it isn't, so it can't be. Where it's like, actually, China is socialist because the government supports the people and not the capitalists or whatever. In a proletarian state, there would be no capitalists. It would be a proletarian state.
Obviously, the very nature of capitalism is to lower wages, increase prices, and this has an inherent contradiction that basically squeezes the working class and inevitably squeezes the capitalists themselves by leading to things like inflation and market crashes. So really, the central theory of Marxism is the belief in a state that works.
No, it's not. Why are you saying this? The central theory or theories of Marxism are class conflict and the material dialectic. If your sentence ever begins with the central theory of Marxism is a state, you've not read Marx. Ugh.
To serve the interests of the working class, to suppress the interests of capitalism, and eventually get to the point where the need of the state itself is irrelevant.
Okay. How much of that do you believe?
Oh, 100%.
All of it. So you're just like a full-fledged Marxist.
100%.
So everything Marx wrote?
I mean, not necessarily every single word.
Well, just so I can understand, just so we can make this constructive. Like, just tell me your political philosophy.
So, leaving aside the fact that she's a Tankie and therefore a fascist, and they're both fascists, and this is just two flavors of fascism, if you want to defend socialism or Marxism or whatever else, make sure to frame it in language that the people who are watching will be able to relate to. So, in this case, my preferred strategy here is to talk about economic democracy. We believe in letting the people speak their voice in the political sphere. We wouldn't accept a dictator, so why do we accept a dictator in the workplace? Every day, millions of hard-working American workers have the value of their labor stolen and siphoned off by people who contribute very little. I have nothing against entrepreneurship, but entrepreneurship has existed in all ages. There's nothing about entrepreneurship that necessitates that a tiny class of ultra-wealthy individuals suppress the will of the people. You want to frame it in language that resonates with the people who are listening. Make them defend autocracy, which he would because he's a fascist. So make them do that. Remember, when I debated Charlie Kirk on Tim Pool's show and he tried to do the whole, I'm anti-pharmaceutical industry thing, I just said, I would have them nationalized. What would you do? And he backed off the subject. Fascists have to LARP at being populists because that phony appeal to the everyman, that imagined majority, is what they build their imagined consensus from. They try not to act as autocrats, even though they are. A fascist will very rarely say something like, I should determine what the people want. They'll almost never say that. Even though that is true, that is what they believe. They want to set the standards by which everyone should live, but they have to pretend that they're actually speaking to some common voice. So you have to weaponize that. You have to take advantage of their inability to consistently own up to their political beliefs.
When it comes to Marxism?
Well, I think that really is my philosophy, and we really have to look at not necessarily Marx, who's the theoretician, right? Not even necessarily Engels. We also have to look at the practitioners of Marxism, right? So those people being obviously Lenin, Mao, today.
Oh, you're a big fan of Mao?
Mao's a pretty interesting character.
How many people did he murder?
How many people did he murder?
That's good. That's what I call good socialist optics right here. How many people did Mao murder? Yeah, I don't know. 50 million? Well, okay. Yeah, I wouldn't. That's step 2 for optics as a socialist, is don't defend Mao. Immediately denounce Mao. Please. Please? Please.
I mean, how many people do you think he murdered? How many people did George Bush
45 million, more or less.
And what are you getting that number from?
How about the Chinese people themselves? Rough calculations of international organizations. Mass graves.
What do you mean, the Victims of Communism Fund?
This is flawless. We are 2 minutes in, and already she is defending the death of like tens of millions of Chinese peasants at the hands of Mao. That's incredible. Immediately, Charlie Kirk has already won this debate. It is not possible for anything she says. Like you could end watching it right now, knowing that Charlie Kirk has won. Like the equivalent of this would unironically be if she somehow managed to trick Charlie Kirk into trying to downplay the numbers of Jews killed in the Holocaust. Like that is actually genuinely the level that this is at. You know, incredible stuff here.
Literally puts out Nazi propaganda on a regular basis.
I'm sorry, wait, the Victims of Communism Fund is a what group?
Puts out Nazi propaganda. They literally have a statue. I mean, you have to be joking, right?
Arrogantly presuming where he gets his data from. So what she's doing here is the same thing that Nazis will do, where if you present them data and they're like, where'd you get that from? Scheckelberg Goldstein? Mick is Irish. Mick Jewish? There we go, pulled it back. Where her like presuming where he's getting his information from makes her look incredibly defensive and makes her look like kind of psychotic, you know, like, oh, did you know those people are actually crazy, you know?
You realize in the USSR, they list Nazi war deaths as victims of communism.
Hold on a second, you're pro-Lenin too?
Yeah, I mean, Lenin did a lot of really great things for the USSR.
Well, Lenin was nowhere near as bad as Mao, so presumably if you're going to defend Mao, you would defend Lenin, right? Like Lenin was like, okay, Lenin was a monster, but Lenin was like a guy who did things. Mao just like rolled his way into the palace, children, and killed 50 million people by asking them to hunt birds and like smelt pig iron on their farms or something. Like Lenin was like a serious person. Mao was only serious as a revolutionary guerrilla leader.
He literally brought what was a feudal peasant society to be a major world superpower.
How about the Ukrainian famine? How was that?
What about the Ukrainian famine?
Like the 6 million people Lenin intentionally killed through forced starvation and famine?
I mean, it's pretty ridiculous to frame that as intentional, right? Like, let's be real, right? There was a famine, and we can...
Lenin? I can't believe that she's so ill-informed in the subject that she's not even going to correct him on that. She's so ready to defend genocide that she's like that she doesn't even hear, you know, like she that's her like priority number one. Holy shit.
can argue about the mismanagement of famines, but capitalists have mismanaged famines all the time.
Hold on a second. What is a
Irish
kulak?
Potato famine.
What's a kulak?
What do you think a kulak is?
I know what a kulak is. You tell me. You're the Marxist.
No, I want to know what you think.
A kulak is someone that owned a certain piece of land that was not allowed to own that same piece of land because of Lenin and Stalin's government. And if they owned more than it, what happened to them?
And do you know what? Okay, let's.
No, just answer the question. I'm curious.
Actually fucked up that so far Charlie Kirk has authentically and honestly taken the progressive position on these issues. It's like genuinely. This is what I mean by like we need to control the MLs or whatever and shut them the fuck up and keep them away from television screens and cameras and microphones. Because like so far everything he said is the left position on the issue. Insane.
What did happen to them?
They went to a gulag. Do you believe those exist?
Yeah, 100% gulags.
How many people
exist.
died in the gulag?
Do you know what a gulag is?
No, just like more or less. I just want to know.
Do you know what a gulag is?
Yeah, a forced labor camp, or it could be a forced death camp.
You mean like the forced labor camps we have in the United States of America, which, by the way, the United States has...
Notice also how it's not just a matter of her positions being terrible. She doesn't have the backbone to actually control the conversation. Like, Charlie Kirk is completely dictating every single... Yeah, whataboutism is like the go-to for Red Fash, because, like, obviously they like, defend 50 genocides, right? So, like, Jesus, you talk to a Nazi, and how many genocides do Nazis defend? Well, it's usually one, because that's the one they care about. You talk to a Tankie, and it's like, well, whole shit, you know, let me pull out my document of mass death events that I have to defend. Jesus Christ. In addition to the whataboutism, it's just, he's completely dictating the terms of the conversation. She's just sort of weakly answering to these points.
There's more people in forced labor than any other country.
Where?
In our federal prison system.
How'd they get
and
to
our state
wait, hold on.
prison
How'd they get to
system.
prison?
They committed crimes.
Oh,
and
okay, so it's not forced. They made a choice.
Are you familiar with the...
Wait, no, that's a
Like, they chose to shoplift, therefore 10 trillion years of forced penal labor.
phenomenal red herring argument you made. I'm just curious.
it's not a red herring.
I just want to know, how many people died in the gulags?
No,
more or less. I'm just curious.
How many people died in American prisons?
Hold on a second.
No answer.
I'm just curious. Gulags, how many people died? I'm just curious. Give me a number. 10 million, 15, 20, 25 million, 30 million?
You know, there's this really amazing anecdote. It's really interesting. You see, and
100,000?
No.
Just, I want a number, like
listen,
more or less.
Listen. Because let's talk about how they get these numbers, right? This is a perfect example. There's this really great story, right?
Oh man, she's actually gonna stick to this. Like, this is what she wants to talk about. She's like, okay, well, hold on. Yeah, let me explain to you. Have you ever noticed how like the doors into the gas chambers were made of wood and weren't sealed properly? That's kind of curious. I'm like, whoa, what the is she doing? She went on there just to let him win. I mean, ideologically, they're really not that far off, you know? There's very little about Charlie Kirk's ideology that wouldn't have worked if he was a high-ranking party member under Stalin. Seriously. The like hyper-nationalism, the suppression of political dissidencies, the purging of degenerates framed as people susceptible to Western bourgeois propaganda. Most of what he believes could have easily slotted in with them. Even more so with Mao, I feel. These are the people who say Vosh harms the left. True! Literally true. Yeah. These are the people who are like, yeah, Vosh is like destroying the reputation of the left by supporting Joe Biden.
Where, you know, you have Winston Churchill talking to Stalin. He's like, hey, how many people died in the famine? And Stalin, obviously not wanting to talk about it, they had bigger things to deal with, you know, like World War II. He puts his hands up. And Winston Churchill walks away and says, oh yeah, that means 10 million. He must mean 10 million. Now, we can obviously talk about mismanagement of famines, but if we're going to talk about mismanagement of famines, why don't we talk about the people in India that Winston Churchill killed? Why don't we talk about the
so we're not here. I'm happy to do a whole defense of the greatest man of the 20th century, Churchill. I'm not going to actually do that right now. So, was Alexander Solzhenitsyn a liar?
I don't know who that is.
You're kidding me. You're a Marxist that you do not know who Alexander Solzhenitsyn is. He wrote a book called The Gulag Archipelago, which was a first-person account. He actually was in a gulag.
Come on.
Oh, man. This is bad on, like, every possible level. That's crazy.
So, and you don't even know who he is.
You know that people that worked on it admitted that they just made up a lot of those numbers, right?
He lived in one, my friend.
There's a lot of people who lived in the gulags. In fact, there's a really great...
yeah, and so they're liars?
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of people that lie about communism
so
on a
let me get
basis.
this right. Let me get this right. So the pastor who spent a decade in a forced
We watched 5 minutes. Nah, we skipped the first 2 minutes.
labor camp with 1 hour of sunshine a day, Joseph Bondarenko, he lied about that?
I mean,
Because he wanted to just spread the gospel? I'm curious just kind of like what your belief is on gulags. So we can just have like a similar...
Okay, I'll tell you. I'll give you a really great example, right? And you see the CIA actually ran numbers
Okay, sorry. Hold on. Let's wait for the... Yeah, okay.
on this. This is really interesting. So somewhere around 10% of the people, right, that like were in the gulags during their peak, which by the way was after a civil war in Russia, right? Obviously with the white army that they had to deal with.
I think this is actually maybe the best possible argument, like the best evidence you could possibly put forward to indicate not only that she and people like her aren't leftists, right? Like we can agree literally so far, like she is bought fully into the framing that like her way of defending socialism is just downplaying genocides. For one. Like that's what Marx would have done. Like if Marx was around today, he would have been like, oh, well actually, let me explain. Like he wouldn't have just denounced all of it. But like there is no reason to defend in any way the USSR or Red China or whatever else at all when talking about socialism. You don't have to. There's no relationship between these factors. If you want to, you can talk about very specific things the USSR did that were good. Housing policy would be a good example. If you want to talk about some value to housing policy, go like, hey, here, you know, housing in the Soviet Union wasn't like amazing, but the decommodification of housing and providing it, you know, through the government did something, and that something was that quite poor people were able to live in apartments. You know, that's something, right? Maybe we can learn from that. Defending the project as a whole is absolutely worthless. These are the people who shit on debate bros, by the way, only then to make a complete fool of themselves in debate. Yeah, it turns out it's not so easy, huh? And Charlie Kirk is quite good at it, too. He's one of the smarter and more quick-witted, dishonest interlocutors. You have to be careful with people like him. There are far easier marks than him. Is she a psyop? No, she's just an authentic... you know, she's kind of a victim. I assume she's younger than me. She's probably just what happens when you spend all your time in these like LARPy online communities that encourage suicidally ineffective political action, that distract you from meaningful analysis and convince you that the real ways to defend socialism are basically just to be a fascist. Do you think it's fair to say Mao and Lenin genuinely attempted to bring socialism into existence, and the means in which they did led to authoritarianism? No, I don't believe so. No, I don't. I think that I don't think that Lenin or Mao were ever socialists. I think that those were both the thinly veneered political aesthetics they adopted in being revolutionary leaders, And the moment they took power, it just became about defending them and their system and their state. And everything that previously was ideological defensible suddenly became a threat to their power. I think that, like, it's like maybe they thought they were doing that, but nothing about their political actions suggests to me a real commitment to that process. All they did was consolidate and consolidate and consolidate and kill opposition over and over and over. I mean, Lenin did this too. It wasn't just Stalin, you know. Lenin had, like, the anarchist militias that he fought with against the Tsar killed before he even took power. Like, before everything was even said and done, they were shot in the back of the head. Thousands of people who worked with him, and he was like, no, sorry. These guys are anarchists, which means that they won't, like, just support my authoritarian state. These worker councils disbanded, you know? It's like, nah, them. Nothing he did lined up with socialism. I bet they self-justified all the time. Oh, I'm sure. People love to do that, you know? I'll let her finish this argument, and then I'm moving past it.
Right, and then the World War II with Nazi Germany, right? Were political prisoners. But this is really interesting, right? I believe it was in the Gorbachev years, they tried to do a big reformation and granted a huge amount of amnesty. To, like, tons and tons of people that were in those gulags.
Hey,
and do you know what happened, Charlie? Do you know what happened after that? This is something that
Gorbachev?
CIA documents literally
You mean after the
reported on.
liberalization of the USSR?
No.
Or what?
What happened to the people that were let out of those gulags?
They wrote books like the Gulag Archipelago that brought down the USSR.
Most of them actually ended up right back in those same gulags because, this is to be very, very clear, that's their normal prison system. That is the normal prison system that they...
Yeah, Keffels, I think that actually ContraPoints, counter-revolutionary as she is, actually made a good point to that effect. In her video where she talked about, like, the radicals, I think it was the voting video, where she talked about how a lot of lefties seem to treat the revolution the same way Christians treat the rapture, as a kind of, like, idyllic, always in the future, never now super event that justifies every moral position they have, but also, like, excuses them from having to do any real work because it's so big and beyond them that it's not really on their scale of things. So you have, like, you have really marginalized people who are so desperate and feel so low and powerless, so much in the same way that people in a low position would turn to God. I think a lot of them turn towards, like, a very ineffectual kind of idyllic leftism, where they, in the same way that fascists do, idealize strongmen because strongmen are like a political shortcut to achieving power. You know, why build a complicated system that rewards good incentive structures? Then you can just, like, have, like, oh, what if we just had a leader who believed everything I believe and they were in charge? And they project those beliefs onto previous strongmen like Stalin or whatever, and they defend the project without understanding what it really means.
They had, just to be clear, because who do you think set up the gulags?
So you're trying to tell me that people that were put in the prisons were not political prisoners?
No.
So what happened to the Mensheviks?
Most of the people.
What the forced imprisonment of the Mensheviks? So tell me how did Trotsky die?
That's a good question. How did Trotsky die?
What do you mean, an assassination?
Who killed?
I really want. I'll end it in a sec. I just want to see if she'll defend the assassination of Trotsky. I genuinely want to hear if she'll say, like, well, you know, he was disseminating counter-revolutionary propaganda in Mexico. I want to see if
Trotsky.
Look.
No. Tell me, who killed Trotsky?
Are we gonna talk about economic theories?
We will. No. I'm just curious, because I'm just trying to understand. You say you're a Leninist.
I mean, who killed Salvador Allende?
So 66 million people died in the gulags, rough estimation.
Okay, she's just not gonna.
Does that not concern you?
I mean, most of those numbers are inflated. Like, you gotta really understand this. Like, the reality is that was their normal prison system.
This feels like watching a politician debate a Twitter user. That's because that's what it is. This is like a perfect representation of a person with a horrid ideology, but a person who's rooted his advocacy in what works in the real world, you know, how to actually argue, how to actually make points, versus a person whose, like, political education and rhetorical education both stem entirely from online circle jerking, you know?
If you look at the mortality rate in the gulags compared to the mortality rate in American prisons at the same exact time...
So let me ask you this. So how many people died in the Holocaust, would you say?
He's made the same conclusion as me. He's made the same conclusion as me, where she's basically just doing the same thing. Oh my God. Do you think, is he going to go for the, like, absolute killer strike and make the, well, National Socialism argument, you know, where it's like, well, you should agree because you've been defending genocides this entire time. And, like, he was a National Socialist. So, like, what's the difference, you know?
I don't know. I'm not a Holocaust expert.
Are you actually kidding me? Do you seriously not know about how many people were killed in the Holocaust? That's That is an inexcusable gap in your political knowledge. That is not information you can't know. 6 million? No, it was 6 million Jews. Total number of people, depending on exactly where you draw the line, was around like 11 to 12 million, I think. Though a lot of people died like outside of camps or like sort of broadly. But, you know, it could be hard to track all of the deaths. But there's 6 million Jews.
How about like 8 million? Would you say that's fair?
No, that wasn't the. No, that's not that's not either number. What?
So I know at a minimum there's 6 million Jews that died.
Okay, so why are
right?
those numbers accurate yet the Gulag ones aren't?
Well, it's very interesting that you bring that up because the truth of the matter is,
this is the last argument we're going to hear. This is going to be a rough one. Charlie Kirk has been folding her like a crepe, okay? Every argument has gone exactly how he wanted it to, and it has brought us to this point, and this is like
is if you look at the people, right? If you look at the like denazification of Western Europe, what you end up having is you have a lot of people like, for example, right, like Nazi government officials that get put in charge of West Germany, right? Then you have Nazi officials that get put in charge of institutions like NATO, and then you have a lot of these Nazis that quite literally set up institutions, right?
Like
put
who?
out information.
So notice how, again, like kind of a teaching lesson here. She is just doing the JQ style of argument, except instead of Jews, she's of course referring to Nazis. But the anti-intellectualism and the tactic is exactly the same. The reason these historical numbers aren't what everyone says they are is because of this nebulous presence of a different political faction in positions of power, you know? Now, obviously, a critical difference in these conspiracies is that Jews are cool and Nazis are not cool. It's a hot Voshite tip to you guys. But it doesn't change the fact that she's engaging in the same kind of motivated reasoning. You know? Does that make sense?
What are you
put
talking
out
about?
information.
Like name one person.
Look at the first commander of NATO, literally. Look at the first NATO commanders.
The first NATO commanders were not the people who came up with the figures for the number of people who died in the gulags in the Soviet Union. Like, she's just gesturing at the existence of people.
They literally brought in people from Nazi Germany. Are we going to pretend that Operation Paperclip is not a thing that the United States did?
Operation Paperclip was in conjunction with Operation Mockingbird, which was a CIA propaganda campaign, which I don't quite answer the question of the accuracy of gulags. Anyway, that's a little bit of futile. I'm just trying to understand, though, like, maybe we're just on different planets here, quite honestly, because I've actually met countless, thousands of people that were in these gulags.
Charlie, come on. Charlie, you're already winning. You don't need to overstate the case. Come on. All right. Now, I think we'll end it there. We'll end it with Charlie having personally met millions of people who were in the gulags thanks to Stalin. Okay. Wow, that was really bad. Keffels, you got shit for covering that. I'm not surprised, tankies defend their own and all, but like, god damn, man. The thing that really bugs me too is that I want to help. I wish I could help. Like, I wish I could talk to Benny and be like, hey, I know you're probably not going to go in Charlie Kirk's thing again, but like, we should really tighten up that rhetoric and also not defend like 50 genocides. She hates you. I know. They all hate me. Because they're fascists and I'm not. I accept their hatred. I think their hatred is an endorsement of my political ideology. Yeah, the person who did this hates me. Great. I must be doing something right, considering she said she was paid $3,000 to do that debate. Really? So she was so it was an op. It was literally an op. It was literally TPUSA spending money to set up like an easy win. Dude, if conservative organizations are paying you to be there, that means that they want you there. It's to their benefit for you to be there. I get offers from plenty of conservative organizations to do events and stuff, and I usually ignore them or turn them down because a lot of them are very clearly just like, come over here and let's like incite an entire like media grift cycle off of like the pointless bullshit that we're going to talk to you about. I don't respect these people. If you want to talk to me, you come on my stream. I don't get offered money. Certainly nobody's offered me $3,000 to go anywhere. I'd like to believe that's because they don't see me as such an easy mark. Anyway, she hates me. Whatever. I did better in my debate with Charlie Kirk, so the results speak for themselves. This is her reaction to Keffels going over it, or people saying, "Are you being serious, man?" Shout out to the people who saw Keffels going after me and immediately subbed to my OnlyFans. First of all, every time, huh? The plug. Not beating the allegations, yeah. And that's kind of funny, not gonna lie. It was funny for me like the first 5 times I saw this exact thing happen, but now it's like every day. It's the same thing, which is somebody does something morally wrong and fucked up, and then rather than account for it at all, they're like, haha, I'm gonna make money off showing my asshole to you. Like, it wasn't just that fucking stupid chick that I debated a couple days ago. It's like very constant, you know? This is like a queer and like a woman thing as well. I don't think guys can get away with it quite as easily because a guy would just have to say like, haha, thanks the money. But there's this pseudo empowerment, you know, to the idea of like, ah, well, you getting that OF bag. And I don't think it should be treated that way. Haha, setback, the cause of leftism, promoted, you know, fascist pundit by going on a show and eating shit. Now look at my OF where I also eat shit. I don't know. Male equivalent is Twitter revenue? Yeah, I suppose so. TYT is not good at hiring people? Well, considering the direction that Cenk and Anna Kasparian have gone, it seems like maybe they're actually quite good at hiring people if their goal is to fuck things up for the left.